Hello and welcome. I'm Darren, and today we are going to discuss 24 gigabytes of VRAM versus FSR4 and how we feel about that. The reason for this is not long ago, let's say pre Radeon A4 launch, the biggest head-to-head, which probably I saw a lot of topics that I got kind of involved in. It seemed to be the most asked question, definitely in the builders groups, for obviously people wanting advice on building new PCs. And it probably seemed to be one of the main arguments across YouTube was the 7900 XTX versus the RTX 4080. You could probably say both within a similar price bracket, depending on your area, and then performance-wise, probably two cards that performed very similar, but the biggest outlier being that the 7900 XTX had that 24 gigabytes of VRAM versus the 16 gigabytes that the RTX 4080 offered. And this is now interesting because the arguments, which were valid, there was always going to be, people have different wants and needs in how they game. Obviously, if you've seen or watched any of my opinions that I've given on the channel, I ran both of those GPUs. I had a preference. My preference was the RTX 4080. And the reason for my preference on the RTX 4080 over the 7900 XTX was purely down to I put visuals over performance. So the best visuals that I can get within a good enough performance is what I need. I'm not a person that puts lower visuals because maximum FPS is what I want. Now, I have no problem with people obviously playing like that. I understand a lot of people play like that. I think I mentioned quite a few times that if I was a Call of Duty player, if that was like one of my main games, and I was inclined to turn graphics down to get the highest FPS possible, I would have 100% gone with the 7900 XTX. If I was a Call of Duty player, I would have 100% gone with the 7900 XTX because even with the graphics cranked, it was still an outlying game that performed very well on the 7900 XTX or on AMD, full stop. So this was the biggest argument, and it went both ways, and the arguments carried on, and the arguments from the AMD side were absolutely no chance. 24 gigabytes of VRAM over the 4080 is an absolute. If you buy a 4080 for DLSS, you are dumb. Got said plenty of times. I got called dumb plenty of times. I had content made about how dumb I was because my preference was DLSS. And the fact that I could play gaining some performance by using DLSS, but in some games with really bad implementations of TAA or so on and so forth at 4K, and admittedly this was my boundaries when it was DLSS 3. So this is before DLSS 4 came along. So I was playing at 4K and I would use DLSS 3 at the time, whichever version it was, at quality. And in most of the games that were coming out towards the end of the last generation, 4K native would have you on both GPUs. So on the 7900 XTX, it would have you around 45 FPS. And on the RTX 4080, it would have you around 45 FPS, give or take a 2 or 3 FPS swing either way. But relative, let's just say 45 FPS was around about par for those GPUs. 4090 was generally around about 60 FPS, native 4K. So having the ability to use DLSS at quality, sometimes look better, sometimes look just as good, like barely tell the difference between if you were running TAA native or if you were running DLSS quality. And that would normally take you up around 70 to 80 FPS, and your picture quality would remain very good. Now, the problem that I had with the 7900 XTX was in the same situation using FSR, whether it had FSR3, because FSR3 wasn't available in a lot of games. But if it had FSR3 or FSR2 or whatever it was, you would notice an instant visual degradation. I'm not saying that that was so impactful that you wouldn't want to play with those settings. In some games it was. So there were some games that I actually found myself turning down settings. So like I said, I was running the XTX, I was running the 4080. With the 4080, I was confident, as long as the game obviously had DLSS in it, I was confident that I could just go into the game menu, flick on DLSS, quality at 4K, and the game would look great, and I'd play the game and everything would be honky-dory. Now, with the XTX, for some parts that was similar, but it never looked as good. And for some parts, FSR was a big letdown in that game too. It was quite noticeable, and it would kind of break immersion for me because I couldn't help but look for it. Now, you have to remember that I was in a situation where I had both. So I could check it out on one and then I could check it out on the other. And when you see it on one, it kind of makes you look at the imperfections that you're seeing on the other. So I'm not saying everyone else had the same kind of views that I had on it, but it did, in some games, it was quite bad. So it would make me, instead of wanting to run like I would on the NVIDIA GPU, it would make me want to turn down some game settings. So instead of playing at ultra, I'd turn it down to like a mixture of high or medium, and that would bring my FPS kind of within a playable range. So it would give me the over 60 FPS experience. And that kind of brings us to where we are now with the 9070 XT versus the 7900 XTX. Now, I have both, and straight out the gate, I will probably say that if I had to now keep one of these GPUs, it would be the 9070 XT. And the reason is because of the reasons why I would take the 4080 over the 7900 XTX, and that is because of FSR4. Because again, we're in a situation where the 9070 XT and the 7900 XTX are very similar in performance. There is a few outliers here and there. The 7900 XTX will beat it on a few games, and the 9070 XT will beat it on a few games. So when you put all of those in the mix, you've got the 4080, the 7900 XTX, and the 9070 XT. They are all performing within a very similar performance range. Like I've said, performance isn't my biggest outlier. So if one has an extra 5 FPS, that isn't an issue that bothers me. I'm surprised it's an issue that bothers most people, because if you can tell the difference between 5 FPS, you're amazing. Now, the difference that I see, because I look for it, is the difference in visuals. And obviously, FSR4 has brought that DLSS-like feature to AMD. So I haven't changed my stance on that. I would still take the lower 16 gigabyte VRAM GPU because of the upscaling feature, the DLSS-like feature, and the same reason that I would have taken the 4080 over the 7900 XTX. Now, what I'm interested in knowing is how many people have changed their mind. Because I'm seeing a lot of people change their mind. And I'm seeing a lot of people that said, absolutely no, you are dumb if you are taking a 16 gigabyte GPU. And I got called it many a time, and it's fine. I personally didn't really attack other people for having their reasons for it. It's one of those things. People are tribal, they go after their brand. This was never a brand thing for me. This was the features that mattered to me. So, like I said, I'm calling FSR4 a DLSS-like feature because it is on par. FSR4, when it looks good, I mean, admittedly, it's not in a lot of games, and that is the biggest problem. That is where it falls short. Obviously, on NVIDIA, you do have that. Go into the NVIDIA app, and you can just crank, as long as DLSS is in the game, like that. You can flick it on. You're at DLSS 4. You are ready to go. FSR4 is completely let down for that reason at the moment, but it has that ability to be a similar feature. I mean, AMD just really, really need to work at this. If not, they are already sending me back into, and that's probably a little bit of a shame. AMD with the 9070 XT have almost forced me already within, I don't know how long I've had this GPU, let's say a month. It might have been a bit longer, maybe 6 weeks. It's been a while. But they've actually sent me back to the same situation I was last generation. There is now a few games like Assassin's Creed, Shadows or something like that, where I started playing it on the AMD GPU the other day, and I'm like, yeah, this just doesn't look as good. And I turned off that system. Obviously, I've got one system here, I've got one system here, and I just ran it on the NVIDIA system instead because I had DLSS 4. And that's a shame because, like I said, I am in this situation and I'm not expecting other people to be in this situation. But when you have both systems and they're available to you at click of a button and you can just go, okay, yeah, that kind of doesn't, there's some kind of flickering in that. And if it's running like the old FSR3, maybe there's some ghosting or something. It is too easy and too simple to just press the off button on that one, press the on button on that one, then you just end up playing it on that one. This being the NVIDIA one. So that takes me back. So FSR4 versus 24 gigabytes of VRAM. Let me know. I'm interested. If you had, let's go there. So I just had a quick look. This is in the UK. It is different everywhere else. I can't tell you, or put it this way, I never give people purchasing advice. I would give you my views on something. I'll give you the information and I'll let you make your own mind up about that. But I'm not here for that reason. I'm here to kind of discuss, interact, kind of tell people my experience. I've bought these GPUs. I don't have to go to YouTube, but it's kind of, I've got a certain amount of time a day and I quite enjoy doing it. So I can tell people my experience. People can watch that. They can either say I'm full of shit. They can agree. Maybe it will make them think. It's like I said, I'm not in this tribal mentality where I'm going to tell you, no, you have to buy the brand that I like. I don't care about the brand. I care about the product. So I buy the product. I don't buy the product by its brand. I could buy an iPhone. I could buy an Android, Samsung. That does not bother me. I will choose which one out of those I prefer by the product itself rather than the brand that's attached to it. So we'll check it out. We can quick go to a few benchmarks because I did have some. So this is a quick look. Obviously, this one is on the Taishi, but it's a 9070 XT. They're all obviously, these are the newest reviews. So this is the best GPU to go to at the moment. And this kind of shows, this is relative performance of the 9070 XT versus what else is on the market. So this is over, I don't know how many games they put over, but they put on Tech Power Up, they put these GPUs across a pretty wide range of other of games. So this is probably at least over 30 games, maybe more. I don't know. It might say within this. If you want to obviously go on Tech Power Up and read it, go ahead. But you can kind of see the relative performance. So at 1080p, you've got this 100%, which is the 9070 XT, and then the XTX is 2% over that. The old 4080 is 5% over that. You've got similar margins at 1440p, and then at 4K, I think things probably narrow up, or the XTX at 4K takes that a little bit. Well, saying that, I say it takes the lead over the 4080. They are the same. So you've got this 100% relative performance versus 105 or 105 for the XTX. This is more, this isn't so much about the 4080, this is more about the XTX versus the 9070 XT. So if you're playing at 1440p, you've got 3% in it. If you're playing at 4K, you've got 5% in it. Now, that is a very small margin. That is a nothing when you look at kind of the 84% of the 5090. Do you know what I mean? We're not talking these type of figures. So, again, that's raster performance. We can have a quick look at RT performance because that does come into it. Obviously, the 9070 XT has had an uplift in ray tracing performance. So if that's something that bothers you, it doesn't need to bother you. And again, this is depending on the games that you play. But there is obviously ray tracing being introduced into a lot of games. And also you do have some that isn't something that you can effectively turn off. I mean, Assassin's Creed, not a huge... Assassin's Creed actually works very well on the AMD GPUs, and I think they do actually come a little bit ahead of NVIDIA. I think they're probably quite a bit ahead in raster performance, and after the ray tracing impact, it's not that bad. But to me, it's a game that if you have the power to do it with ray tracing, you want to leave those features on. It is quite transformative in some of these games. So you can see here 1440p, the relative performance compared to the XTX. The XTX is down here. So the XTX is at 85%, whereas the 9070 XT is up at 100%. So that's a fair bit of difference. And again here, so at 4K, you've got 100%, and you've got the XTX down at 83%. So again, in fact, there's a bit of a bigger margin there. So a bit of a bigger margin at 4K, which is quite interesting. With obviously the whole reason for the XTX was this 24 gigabytes of VRAM. You have to remember that is because the other thing is you do pull more power with the XTX. The XTX is using more juice at your wall to get it running because it is carrying that 24 gigabytes of VRAM. So we can kind of have a quick look at how that impacts the games. So if you're playing something like Alan Wake, if you want to play kind of native performance, you're going to get that 60 FPS experience at 1440p with ray tracing enabled. I don't think this is obviously path tracing, but this is some level of ray tracing. Whereas the XTX, you're down at 50. There's not a huge deal there. It's not a massive gap, but it is noticeable. And with something like Alan Wake, you don't have FSR4, so you could bear that in mind that you could do it obviously at native at 1440p, whereas you're going to be a little bit left behind. Cyberpunk, if we go to something like Cyberpunk 1440p, again, you're getting close to that 60 FPS experience, whereas with the XTX, you're down at 40. So there's a decent kind of, there's like a 14 or 13 or 14 FPS swing there, which is quite substantial. Again, this is another game that doesn't have FSR4. You can obviously mod it in if that's something that you want to do. It's not my cup of tea, but obviously you have that ability with the 9070 XT. You don't have that ability with the 7900 XTX because we don't know what's happening with FSR4 going backwards to RDNA 3. Will it happen? Will it not? Who knows? Nothing's really been said. It's all gone probably a little bit quiet when it comes to that. So we'll go and look at prices. So this is the question. This is what I would like answered. If you have £800 in your pocket, like I said, this is UK, it's British pounds. I can't talk about the rest of the world. I don't know how this holds up where you are. And to be fair, I'd imagine in different states, in different availability, the shops that are next to you, whether it be a Micro Center or a Best Buy or whatever you're using in the US, you're going to have different deals, you're going to have different prices. But at this moment in time, you have, we've got 3 available 7900 XTXs at the moment. We have a Hellhound, a Speedster Merc, and a refurb. XTX tough. So 800. 800 is your cheapest bet. If we go to the 9070 XT, 800 is your most expensive. Happens to be the one that I bought, and I didn't pay £800 for it, so it's gone up in price. We can go down as far as 689 for the XFX Swift. So you could save yourself just over £100 there and buy the XTX XFX Swift Radeon. Possibly not. I mean, I'd spend that a little bit more and probably go with one of these XFX. Would I go that much more? I have the Gigabyte, very good card. Performance is very good. Would I go over, what is it, £80? Would I go £80 more over an XFX? I'm not sure. Maybe, maybe not. I think that's probably, is that the most, so that's the most powerful XFX card, 3100 megahertz boost. What's the difference in these two? Absolutely nothing. Are they the same? Nope. One is £10 more, or it's over £10 more. What's the difference? OC magnetic air. Okay, so this one's got the removable fans. So that's probably your highest available XFX card. It is getting close, obviously, to this Gigabyte card. They are big. That's the one thing about those, is they are very big cards. You need to make sure, you might be in a kind of situation where you might have to buy a bigger case just to fit one of those in. But, I mean, that's kind of me starting to talk trash, basically. So we'll ignore my trash talking. So we've seen it, relative performance, XTX versus the 9070 XT. There is hardly anything in it. 5% at raster. That might be what means more to people. It's not something that means more to me. I can understand if it means more to people. To me, the upscaler, like it was with the 4080, is still the more important factor over that extra 24 gigabytes of VRAM. Now, I've put up a couple of videos. There is a couple of games that the AMD in their naming scheme. So the 9070 XT, I did run into at 4K a couple of games that did have a little bit of a VRAM issue. So I did put up a video of that. One of them is Microsoft Flight Simulator, and the other one is Forza Motorsport. To fix that, it's nothing. It is those are both, by the way, those are both games that are running RT, which does obviously take up some more VRAM. You're talking turning the settings down from like ultra to high, and you're fixed. You will not, or certainly I would say you would have to pause it, zoom, whatever you need to do to actually see the difference. Again, knowing that, it still wouldn't be enough for me. If I had to give up one now, I would still give up the XTX. And I really like the XTX. It is a good GPU. I'm not about to get rid of it. I want to keep it. So this would have to be a scenario of, I have no choice. I am desperate for this money. Which one am I going to sell? And unfortunately, it would be the XTX. And that is, for, like I've said, for the same reasons that I was abused last generation, for the reasons why I would have chosen the 4080 over the 7900 XTX. So let me know. I mean, I'm interested to know, has any XTX owners bought a 9070 XT, tried it out, and then sold it on? Because they would have, because from what they were concerned, the XTX was still the better GPU. Like, how much difference does, because like I said, you're pulling more power, you don't have FSR4, you have less ray tracing, so it literally is that 24 gigabytes of VRAM, because you're pulling more power to have that 24 gigabytes of VRAM. How important is that to you? I've seen it in a couple of games, but I'm playing at 4K, and not a lot of people play at 4K. Now, I know that people would probably think, oh, I need to feel comfortable. I need to have that 24 gigabytes because I'm scared if ever I run out. It's not that big a deal. I'm going to be honest with you, it's not that big a deal. You can, like, that's the good thing about PC. You can just change a few settings, and I'm going to be honest with you, you probably wouldn't even know you've done it. I mean, you could probably let the game set itself up and you'd probably be like, oh, this looks really good, and you'd be quite happy with it, especially if you have a feature like FSR4. That will make you think, oh, this game looks amazing. Whereas if you're stuck in a situation where you're using FSR3, you definitely won't get that same thing. And a lot of this doesn't come across on YouTube. Like, I notice straight away when I watch a video back when I was doing a lot of DLSS4. DLSS4 looks at times like it is a higher resolution. It like when I'm using it at 4K, I think, oh my god, I'm playing at like 5K. This looks so clean, it's unbelievable. When I upload it to YouTube, that is lost. That is completely gone. And it's the same with FSR4. FSR4 and something like Horizon, whatever it is, the newest Horizon. In that, click that on, and it is so clean and so sharp. I don't want to say sharp because it makes people think that it's over sharpened. It's not. It's just like every little line is so crisp, and it almost brings out this brightness to it that, again, it looks like suddenly you've gone up a resolution. It looks like, oh, this looks better now than 4K. And that's the thing, that if FSR4 doesn't come to Radeon A3, if it doesn't come to the XTX, it won't have that. So let me know. Let me know. I was wrong. Well, apparently I was wrong by a lot of people for choosing the 4080 last generation. Am I still wrong this generation for choosing the 9070 XT? Because I'm having... It is a fix for the problems that I had, for me, with the XTX. But it's not enough, and AMD need to sort that out, because, like I said, I'm not wanting to mud stuff. I don't want to mud stuff on the NVIDIA GPU, and I don't have to, and I don't want to mud stuff on the AMD GPU. I want it to come to more games because it's getting close. It has already happened where I'm back to where I was the last generation, where I'm starting to swap back over to the NVIDIA GPU because FSR4 isn't available in enough games yet. And that's probably where this everything I'm trying to say does break down a little bit, because I'm saying the 9070 XT is better because of FSR4, but at the same time I'm saying it's not available in enough games. If it starts coming to at least all the new games that gets launched, at least it's in it, that's a good start. But it kind of needs to go to some of the older games that people still play all the time. Like, obviously, if I want to fire up Tarkov, I've been a big Tarkov player for the last couple of years. I have to go with the NVIDIA GPU because of DLSS. And it's not even because of DLSS4. I need to go to the NVIDIA GPU just for DLSS3 because FSR in that game is so bad. FSR4 in that game would be a complete game changer because it performs probably better on AMD. That game runs really smooth on AMD. It's not bad on NVIDIA. It's probably a bit smoother on AMD, and you've got more performance on AMD. Native to native, I'd probably get an extra 10 FPS on the 9070 XT. So if that had FSR4 in it, I'd be playing it on the AMD GPU, but I'm forced to play it on the NVIDIA GPU because it looks so much better, even with DLSS 3. So that's it. Let me know in the comments. I'm going to leave it there, and I'll catch you in the next one.